Breaking news this AM in the NFL when it comes to Tom Brady, the GOAT. He's announcing retirement once again. Of course, this comes after a season ended there in Tampa Bay, that loss to the Cowboys. Brady said after that game he had no idea what he was going to do, but announcing it today via Twitter that he is retiring early this morning here. Here's TB12 on that announcement, doing it himself.
Good morning, guys. I'll get to the point right away. I'm retiring for good. I know the process was a pretty big deal last time, so when I woke up this morning, I figured I'd just press record and let you guys know first. So I won't be long-winded. Like, you only get one super emotional retirement essay, and I used mine up last year. So really thank you guys so much, to every single one of you, for supporting me, my family, my friends, my teammates, my competitors. I could go on forever. There's too many. Thank you guys for allowing me to live my absolute dream. I wouldn't change a thing. Love you all.
The GOAT again saying bye-bye to the NFL. We've seen this before, but a little emotion there. I want to welcome in lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones. And JJ, your reaction to this news this morning. Once again, TB12 calling it a career.
You know, Brandon, I don't know if I'm supposed to be surprised. After all, the man's 45 going on 46 years old. He's already retired once. He appeared to be diminished a bit on the field last year. Yet I'm still sitting here a touch surprised. I thought, and a number of folks around the league thought, that he was going to give it one more go next year. And it could be in Tampa. It could have been with the Las Vegas Raiders. There was a lot of airspace taken up about the San Francisco 49ers. But ultimately, he's deciding to call it quits. And you have to imagine that there's plenty of personal sort of attachments that are factoring into this for Tom Brady. You know, he's the GOAT. He's done everything that you can possibly do at the position and then more. So it's not like he has anything left to accomplish. And so on one hand, there is some surprise. On the other hand, of course, considering where we were about this time last year, no surprise at all.
JJ, when you look at it, of course, you mentioned it. We saw maybe the decline last year, and then towards the end of the year, and of course the record and what the Bucs put on display this season. What do you think was maybe the deciding factor? We know the personal issue that kind of hovered in the beginning of the season, and then also the decline, as you mentioned there, the numbers we haven't seen. But what do you think was a deciding factor for him here making that decision today?
Yeah, I mean, certainly without any of us really knowing how deep the personal issues went, as we can all just sort of imagine, taking the step back and being outsiders, those have to factor in pretty heavily, right? Then you have to consider where your skills are at this point. You know, Tom really wanted to always play to 45. He said it for many, many years. And so he hit that 45-year-old mark. And so, you know, that was another mission accomplished. He may have looked out on the landscape of where he could go, where he could stay with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and say, you know, 2 years ago it was the Super Bowl. Last year it was losing in the divisional round. This year it was losing in the wild card round. And, you know, he's a historian of football. He understands that very rarely do you get to write your own script going out, and very rarely is that script going to make an about face there at the end. And so, you know, he could have been a realist looking at that and realizing, hey, that 8th Super Bowl may be really, really difficult to attain. And so those are the determinations, the factors that I'm sure went into this decision. But of course, in no small part, certainly everything going on in his personal life at this point in his life, and certainly at this point in his professional life, I would not at all be surprised to learn just how much they factored into this decision.
JJ, you're well tapped into every organization out there. You know the front offices and how they operate. But realistically, you know, what were you hearing, the rumblings of maybe him going to a Vegas or staying with the Bucs there, of maybe returning and being 46 here in 2023? What were those conversations you were kind of hearing there?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the Bucs, who I think a lot of folks thought that he was done in Tampa Bay. I mean, even after his press conference following that Dallas loss in the playoffs, one that I was at, where he essentially said his goodbyes, it seemed like, to the franchise. Now I think we all understand it was his goodbyes to the NFL at large, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers thought that they had a very good chance at keeping him, considering where his family was located in Florida, in South Florida. And so it'd be a quick jaunt down there from Tampa. And then I know the Vegas Raiders absolutely thought that they were going to have a very, very good shot at Tom Brady. And so you have those two teams certainly I had at the top of the list. Meanwhile, when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, now that Brady is retiring, the Bucs, they're going to have some dead money here. They're going to have about $11 million this upcoming season, which is not too much. And then they're going to have to push a lot of it into 2024. That's going to be about $24 million. And that's obviously a bit more substantial, but teams can work around it. But of course, the Bucs, considering that dead money, had hoped that they would be able to re-sign Tom Brady for another year and make another run at it, despite all the evidence on that team that they were not going to be able to really run it back, if you will. And so those were the two teams I had always felt, and those were the teams that I think a number of folks around the league thought he could wind up at. I do want to be clear, there was the prevailing thought that Tom Brady was not done. He was going to play another year in 2023, that he was maybe not going to be in Tampa, maybe he was going to be in Vegas, or the Niners, or the Dolphins would make another run. Throw all these teams, the Tennessee Titans perhaps reuniting with his old Patriots teammate Mike Vrabel. All those were being tossed about, bandied about. Ultimately, though, he decides, it seems like very recently, to hang him up.
If we look back at this season and how it kind of ended for the Bucs, of course, not how he wanted it to, how would you look at how it kind of panned out, because they thought they were getting the pieces back to make another run, healthy coming into this year? How would we categorize this season, this final season for him?
Yeah, it was a disappointment, I think. Especially considering what he knew, what we all knew the Tampa Bay Bucs were capable of. He spent 3 seasons there. Again, they win the Super Bowl in 2020. They go to the divisional round, but when he steps off the field, they should be going to overtime against the Rams, and he did everything that he was supposed to do there in the fourth quarter to put themselves in position, ultimately, of course, losing out to the eventual Super Bowl champions. And then this season, just very, very difficult, where the team just could not run the football. You saw the age on both sides of the ball. You saw the difficulties with the coaching staff, with the offensive play calling, by virtue of Byron Leftwich being relieved of his duties there at offensive coordinator. Brady missed 11 days of training camp. He left the team mid-season on a Friday to go to Robert Kraft's wedding. Very, very unusual. He was dealing with the personal issues, as we have talked about. Again, he was forced to throw the football more than he ever has in any season of his career, setting a new NFL record that he had previously set the year before. And so it was difficult, and a lot was on his shoulders, those 45-year-old shoulders. And, they lost to a much better team in the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know that anyone thought that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would actually make noise in the NFC playoffs, just because this was not a team that really scared anybody. The only thing that scared them was the thought, the boogeyman of Tom Brady in the postseason. And then when we realized that this was a team sport and that he could only do so much, certainly at 45, I think that you'd have to characterize and categorize this season for Tom Brady as a disappointment, certainly compared to the previous 2+ decades that he had in the league. Doesn't go out on top, but how few do.
The Bucs, of course, releasing a thank you there on Twitter, saying thank you 12. But JJ, you kind of touched on it, the fun stories that we saw leading up to this. There was a video of him there in Miami looking at schools for his kids, maybe going back to San Francisco, the West Coast kid, and other teams out there. Your thoughts on what happens to those teams, the Niners, the Dolphins, maybe, the Raiders? Which direction, how does that impact them when they thought they maybe get TB12 at least for 1 year, maybe a couple?
Yeah, well, we're going to have a lot of movement around the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks. When you look at the Raiders, they're going to be in the market for a quarterback. There's no question about it right now, attempting to trade Derek Carr and ultimately very likely going to have to release him. San Francisco 49ers didn't make a lot of sense to me with Tom Brady. If Brock Purdy is able to come back and be ready for training camp, and they're going to have to figure that out in the next couple of weeks because of that UCL injury that's going to need a repair that will keep him out at least 6 months. They still have Trey Lance, who should be healthy there. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be available. He won't be back with the San Francisco 49ers. The Miami Dolphins have Tua. Won't at all be surprised if they go out and acquire someone else, a veteran. And so plenty of movement still to be figured out. Aaron Rodgers, of course, is going to be a name at the top of the list, as it appears that he is working on his departure from Green Bay. So plenty to be figured out around the NFL.
Plenty when it comes to the 7-time champion there. Jonathan Jones joining us here in that breaking news. Tom Brady calling it a career again when it comes to the GOAT. Appreciate your time. Want to take a look at it, of course. Brady has numerous records when you look at the books there. Passing yards, almost over close to 90,000 TDs, 649 completions. These are all the numbers that he amassed over that 20-plus year career. 3 in Tampa, along with a Super Bowl, and 20 in New England as well. So plenty for TB12, as he calls it a career. On Twitter, leaving it short and sweet for us this time around. TB12 riding off into the sunset.
Good morning, guys. I'll get to the point right away. I'm retiring for good. I know the process was a pretty big deal last time, so when I woke up this morning, I figured I'd just press record and let you guys know first. So I won't be long-winded. Like, you only get one super emotional retirement essay, and I used mine up last year. So really thank you guys so much, to every single one of you, for supporting me, my family, my friends, my teammates, my competitors. I could go on forever. There's too many. Thank you guys for allowing me to live my absolute dream. I wouldn't change a thing. Love you all.
What a way to wake up this morning. Tom Brady announcing he is retiring via that video that we just showed you on Twitter. We weren't expecting that, had other plans for the morning show, but hey, the GOAT hanging it up, 7 Super Bowl titles.
When the GOAT talks, you listen. And, of course, we've been listening leading into this year, of course, everything off the field, but trying to give it one last run here for Tampa Bay. And it was a good one, too, ending a illustrious career when you talk about it. But it started in New England. And when you think about New England, 6th-round pick, 199, everything he's accomplished to the point. I want to take a look at this. All the numbers he's amassed here. 45 years of age, by the way. When you think about in the league, guys don't last that long, maybe into their mid-30s. But he pushed the limits. 10 more years, but you see the passing yards, the touchdowns, completions, and then at the bottom there, the title's 7, enough for 2 hands. And of course, ending this on the high road when it comes to the GOAT riding off into a career that you talk about, so many dream about. And he mentioned that dream, and that dream, of course, started in New England. I want to bring in our Scott Pioli, and Scott Pioli, of course, was a part of that dream in New England. And Scott, I want you to take us back to that, drafting Brady, getting him in there, this scrawny kid from Michigan, and now seeing his career come to an end. But, of course, on a high note, 7 rings at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's I'm so happy for him. And he said that this wasn't going to be an emotional thing, but I heard his voice in that crack a couple of times and lean towards emotion. Tommy is a very emotional person and an incredibly thoughtful, kind, and sweet person. And I can hear, he said last year was the emotional one, but I know that there's moments of emotion. And, it's interesting to try to, I'm going to let so many other people will wrap up his entire career. But, going back to that time in the draft, and I've said this repeatedly, that there were things we really liked about Tommy and things that we saw that were potentially developable, if that is such a word. And he absolutely did that. Everything that he needed to be and needed to do, he started doing as a young player. We were happy to get him. We kept him as a 4th quarterback, on our roster, which was kind of crazy at the time, people thought. But we really thought we had something. And we set up a structure where he could develop. But I will say this wasn't about us. This was about the kid back when he was a kid. And he worked as hard and as thoughtfully, as intensely as anyone I've ever been around. And, there's a lot of things going through my thoughts this morning. And when I heard his voice and I see this, last year was rushed for a number of reasons. And when he retired last year, I didn't think that it was for real, for whatever reason. It was somewhat surreal. And I was like, yeah, I'm not buying this. And this time, I really think I am done. I think it's clear that he's done.
Scott, I'm curious too. You mentioned it there, and also Charles Davis mentioned the will to play, the certain intangibles that he has. We have never seen that from an athlete across the sports landscape, but we saw it in one person, and that was Tom Brady. Talk about that a little bit on what you saw there in New England in his time there in the Patriots uniform.
And it started early because here's this, I spent 27 years in the league, and as a scout in front offices and the game and coaching. Prior to that, coaching myself, and through my football life, as a high school player, college player, and then coaching in college. We all come across people that work really hard, right? There's a lot of people that work hard and make themselves into better players or good players. But there was, again, I don't even know how to fully articulate it, but he had this combination of work ethic and work habits that were rare. He arrived to us with this outrageous work ethic, and that's a very important thing. And then there's some players you can teach the right work habits. Brady picked up on work habits of the people around him very strategically. And I don't mean in a weird strategic way. He knew what would apply to him and wouldn't apply to him. And, I always go back to this one story that was, after his rookie year. He's the number 4 quarterback all year behind Drew Bledsoe, John Freese, and Michael Bishop, who we had on the roster at 1, 2, and 3 at the Patriots in 2000, the year we drafted him. But that offseason, and I'll never forget this, there was construction going on in the new stadium. We were still working out of the Foxborough Stadium. It was a Friday night, and it was late at night. And it was a couple of weeks before the draft, and I'm in the office a little bit late on a Friday night, and still getting out at a decent hour. It was like, 9:30 at night. And I see the lights on our bubble. Our indoor practice facility at that time was one of those old school bubbles. And I'm like, gosh, dog, who left the lights on in the bubble? And I drive around the construction over to the bubble, and I see parked outside is this little yellow Jeep. And Tommy had this ugly little yellow Jeep that Bledsoe had helped him get a car deal on, but was kind of clowning him also. And I go into the facility, and again, I want to reiterate, it's the off season. It's early April. It's either late March or early April, Friday night. And, I think we all know that Tom Brady's a pretty handsome guy, and he could probably be out doing whatever he wanted on a Friday night in April. This is before and around, the off-season program's there. And I go inside, and there he is. He's got this boom box playing some pretty bad music. He was a ballad guy. And he's listening to music. He's got the elastics around his ankle. He's doing movement drills. And the giant net that has the five or six buckets in it? And he's throwing the ball, and he's by himself on a Friday night. And I walk in, and I watch him for a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds, and he sees me, and he jogs over. We talk, hey, how you doing? And, previously, Tommy had wanted a key to the facility to allow him to get in. So, one of us might have made sure he had a key. And I talked to him. He had a key, let himself in. And we talked real quick, and I told him, hey, just make sure you turn off the lights when you're done eating. And I started to turn and walk away, and he yells out, he goes, hey, babe. And he jogs over to me again. He goes, do me a favor. Don't tell anyone you saw me here tonight. And it was one of those moments, it was genuine. He was so self-aware, and he knew that he needed to work. But he also had this incredible degree of confidence, but also a touch of insecurity that he knew that he had to work harder because he was gifted in certain ways physically, but not enormously gifted, and he was going to have to work harder than people. And I know that's a long story, but it encapsulates who he was in so many ways that, he became this celebrity superstar figure that I'm not sure he wanted to be the greatest quarterback of all time. I don't know if he ever truly wanted all that came with that. He's a fiercely private person, loves his family dearly, and he worked to become this thing. And I think there were times that he battled the enormous celebrity that came with being the greatest of all time. And but knowing him from the beginning and how hard, not only that he worked, but how hard he knew he had to work. And he knew that there were people constantly around him playing the position that were so much more skilled than him, but he was never going to be outworked.
As you can see there, working his way to greatness at the age of 45. Scott Pioli, the former 5-time Executive of the Year there with New England. Appreciate your time and insight there. Stories we wouldn't hear, of course, on any other day. Appreciate it as always. But speaking of the Patriots, a dream that started with a 199 pick overall in the 6th round in 2000. Tom Brady, of course, the Patriots on Twitter with the 3 hashtags or the emojis of the GOAT there attached to that. Thank you for Tom Brady, of course, making that announcement and calling it a career this morning.
Good morning, guys. I'll get to the point right away. I'm retiring for good. I know the process was a pretty big deal last time, so when I woke up this morning, I figured I'd just press record and let you guys know first. So I won't be long-winded. I think you only get one super emotional retirement essay, and I used mine up last year. So really thank you guys so much, to every single one of you, for supporting me, my family, my friends, my teammates, my competitors. I could go on forever. There's too many. Thank you guys for allowing me to live my absolute dream. I wouldn't change a thing. Love you all.
Tom Brady in the news breaking business, announcing his retirement a second time from the NFL. You see this tweet and graphic put out by the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His resume truly impeccable. I can't even list it all off because it will take too much time. 15 Pro Bowl selections, won the Super Bowl 7 times. Just the short list of a long list of accolades that Brady racked up during his career. We now bring in our GM, Rick Spielman, to the fold. Rick, the announcement this morning when Brady put out that tweet, what was your first reaction?
Probably like most people, is this real or is this not real? He came out last year. It sounded like he was very sincere in that video, but until we don't see him in a uniform next year when week 1 kicks off in the NFL, I'll hold my breath a little bit, but I do think if this is true, that he had just an unbelievable, remarkable career that may never be matched again.
A career with a lot of numbers, a lot of opportunities to just be able to rack things up. You, when you were in Miami, had the opportunity in 2000 to draft Tom Brady. Why did you not make that move?
We were pretty filled at the quarterback position at the bottom of the 7th round, so we thought maybe we'd take a swing at him as a college free agent, just a camp arm to get us through. And but it's incredible where he was drafted and the career he ended up having. And I always say, just like on some of the guys that I have hit on in the later rounds, if I was that smart, we would have drafted him a lot earlier. But Tom Brady defied all the odds coming out of Michigan. No one had him up there. And for a guy that was drafted where he was drafted to go on and be the greatest of all time, it's an incredible story.
During that pre-draft process leading up to it in 2000, did you guys meet with Brady and get the chance to chop it up with him?
No, I can't recall if we met with him. I think we saw a picture of his body at the combine at the time. It felt that he would probably have a great career on CBS HQ in the future after he got cut from camp. But no, just all kidding aside, no, I don't recall meeting with him. I do recall scouting at him, and the biggest thing was how talented was his arm, how athletic was he going to be. A lot of teams had him as like a late round, take a flyer on and see what happens. And New England struck gold and hit on the probably the greatest quarterback to ever play the game.
Seeing from where he started with those humble beginnings to then now becoming potentially the greatest ever to do it at that quarterback position, how do you even put that into words, that maturation and that improvement that he showed?
You can't. I wish you can say you can even write this in a movie script, but you can't do that because no one would believe it was real. And it was some kind of Fantasyland script on Hallmark. But it's incredible what he was able to do, and I don't think that'll ever be matched. And if you look at all these young quarterbacks today, we're talking about Burrow and them, and are they going to be a Tom Brady-like career? Well, we won't know that for another 20-some years because I don't see anyone ever playing at this level and at this age where he retires and was still playing at a high level at 45 years old.
From your perspective, when you're in the front office and you have a QB and you have someone like Brady who just provides so much stability to the franchise, how much easier does that make your job as you then go to fill out the team knowing you have that QB in place?
Well, it's a lot easier to find an offensive guard or a linebacker than it is to find a quarterback. And everybody's chasing. Every year, teams that don't have quarterbacks are chasing that player that's going to be the next Tom Brady. And so that's what you're going to see in this year's draft. Again, there's never, ever be 32 teams that are totally satisfied with their quarterbacks. So there's always going to be that pursuit and chase. And if you're blessed and fortunate enough to get a Tom Brady type talent, which is to me a once in a lifetime type talent, then you've struck gold.
Tom Brady going into retirement now puts a big question mark for the Bucs, number one at QB, and assuming a lot of teams also around the league who thought that maybe they could have a chance to get Brady. But you look at that Bucs roster, they've got my guy, the Gator, Kyle Trask, at QB, but you put on your GM hat in this situation. First off, the division in the NFC South not killing it when it comes to QB play. But for Tampa, where do they go from here now at that position?
Well, for your sake, Zach, I'm trading him to Carolina, so you can have him up in Carolina, Kyle Trask, which I know you'd be very excited about. But in all seriousness, they have to resolve that quarterback now. But first, they have to get an offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of movement and a lot of change going on in Tampa right now. And where they're picking in the draft, I don't think they're going to get a swing at one of these top four quarterbacks, whether it be Stroud, whether it be Young, whether it be Richardson or any of the guys, Levis. They won't get an opportunity to see him. So it'll be interesting to see with their cap space how they're going to move forward. But before they can determine how they're going to move forward, especially on the offensive side of the ball, Todd Bowles has to hire an offensive coordinator. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get into the vet market or try to make a trade for someone.
When you look at that vet market or making a trade for someone, who would be a name that you think could fit in Tampa?
The second GOAT of all time, maybe Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know if he would go down to Tampa. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see if Garoppolo or if they go ahead and try to get a Derek Carr down there. But right now, that is a huge void on that roster, and they have to get a veteran that could come in because they have a good football team. They have some good players on that football team, and they're built to win now. I don't think this is a total rebuild mode, but they're built to win now. So I think they'll start pursuing, once they get that offensive coordinator in place and the offensive scheme and system that they're going to run, then they'll hone in on, I believe, on one of these vet quarterbacks that will fit and be able to run that scheme.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, there was a lot of Aaron Rodgers talk about not liking his receivers, them being so young and them needing to get ready and adjust to the game. Do you think with that roster over in Tampa, with the Mike Evans, with the Godwin, would that be an attractive roster and fit for Rodgers to potentially even be interested in going to Tampa?
I think from a roster standpoint it would be, but I think it all depends on who the offensive coordinator is going to be. Like everybody, and we've talked about it on yesterday, and I talked about it with Pete Prisco, that seems like the Jets are a natural fit because they hired offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, who worked with Rodgers in Green Bay. But you have to understand that Aaron Rodgers and how you deal with Aaron Rodgers, because he is also a GOAT, per se, when he retires and a future Hall of Famer. But it has to be a system that fits what Aaron Rodgers has run for the past, 15, 20 years he's been in the league and been in Green Bay. And when these veterans, no matter how good they are, if you try to force them into a new offensive scheme, usually they're going to struggle. Like when Tom Brady went down to Tampa, what'd they do? They adjusted their offense to what Tom Brady knows and how he's going to be most effective. So wherever Aaron Rodgers ends up, that team's going to have to take that same approach.
And we continue that GOAT talk with my guy Ryan here, checking in on HQ. And Ryan, I'm curious, that news coming out this morning by Tom Brady himself on Twitter. Where were you when this came out, and did you believe it at that time?
I was getting the kids ready for breakfast in school, and I did believe it. I mean, when you see that video, he's incredibly emotional, and it kind of catches him. And I remember retiring myself. It kind of catches you saying the words out loud, hey, I'm done. But he was down by the beach, and it was something where he was being clear, being quick. And I love that he said you only get one retirement letter, so I'm going to make this short. But congratulations to Tom Brady. What an amazing career. And I'm happy for him. Retirement's a lot better, Brandon, than going into the facility every day at 7 a.m. You know, yes, you get to compete for a championship, but you get free time, something Tom Brady hasn't had for over 20 years.
Brian, I'm curious, too, because you had a chance to play alongside some great ones. It's been Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, of course, there, that Super Bowl we saw with the Broncos. What separated him from those? Of course, we know the numbers, but let's start from up here. What separated him from those?
Well, he was willing to know everybody on his team, and talking to multiple players that play with him through different teams, different championships. And one guy I know was a practice squad member, and Tom Brady came over and introduced himself on the first day. You don't have to do that. And think about this. He was the best in just one season going to Tampa Bay. To do it right away, that's unheard of. Even with Peyton Manning, it took him a couple of years to win the Super Bowl at the Broncos. Ben Roethlisberger wasn't able to go back after winning his last one. So for Tom Brady to just establish dominance while being a great teammate, hello to everybody who thinks being great matters most. No, you have to be a great teammate. That's what made Tom Brady different. That's why we know Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski. That's why we know about the teams that the Patriots had over the years. He was different. And one quick story, Brandon, when we were in college with Charlie Weiss, his offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss said on that final drive, he had drawn up a play for Tom Brady, and the guy was open. And Tom Brady threw it away. Tom Brady jogged over, and Charlie Weiss and his New Jersey self said, "What the bleep are you doing?" He said, "Coach, he was open, but we would have had to waste a timeout. What's the play?" So he was thinking a mile ahead of even his offensive coordinator in his first Super Bowl. Those are all examples of how Tom Brady is different.
Our good friend LeJay Douzeville broke it down for us. When we had games against CB12, there was extra preparation there on the defensive side. I'm curious for you, watching him on the opposing sideline, what was that like? Because we get the fan perspective, seeing it on TV, but you down on the field, what was that like for you to watch him work?
Well, the sound, first of all, right? The sparkling helmet, and then you actually hear Tom Brady speaking. And he would say things like, we've got a mismatch here. He would call out his play all the time on different guys. He would call out, hey, 54 is a great win for us, and then throw the ball against number 54. In addition to how prepared he was, he competed better than anybody else in the NFL. And every player who played against him or a team that he was on could tell you that. One of the things people miss is how deep he competes and how he takes disrespect at a high level from anybody he plays against. So it's amazing. It was amazing just to hear his words, but also to see how he would call out the game and make it a game within the game with his opponents who he was getting ready to embarrass.
You mentioned the connection there with your teammates is the one reason why he has 7 Super Bowl rings, but it's very hard for a quarterback to go to a totally different organization, especially after spending 20 years in one location, going to Tampa Bay and winning a Super Bowl. From the outside looking in, talk about maybe the difficulties, because Peyton did that for you guys in Denver, but how he was able to kind of make you seem that seamlessly a little bit for them.
Well, he teaches guys how to practice, and he allowed Leonard Fournette to become his best ever, and he really just gave guys a chance. One of the things, Brandon, that happens as players when you get a top-tier quality guy, you're running more plays in practices, but also the balls that he throws are giving guys a chance to where maybe you weren't open. Maybe that's a high ball, but I think you're an athlete. Are you going to tell me you're not athletic enough to go up and get it? Those are the kinds of plays that he would make in practice. Those are the things that Ben Roethlisberger and Peyton Manning would do in practice. It's not just about on Sundays. It's about, hey, I'm going to give you a chance in the front pylon. Can you do it? What athlete's going to say no? But then also being able to enjoy it. I think one of the things that as football players, you really get lost sometimes in winning is you got to win, you got to win, you got to win. But this man threw a football from a boat to another boat. This man had to be carried away from a party, and we couldn't say anything against it, right? He had fun, and no matter what you do, where you are, you have to have fun when you're winning. And in addition to being the best on the field, Tom Brady was the best at having fun, too.
You talk about, I want to look at Ryan Jensen because he tweeted out talking about Tom Brady saying, thank you for pushing me every day this season mentally and physically to get back on the field. He did so in that final game, even though it was a loss to the Cowboys. How important is that connection to an O-lineman and quarterback? Because we see it a lot this season where he was jawing at those guys, but of course it's to kind of boost them up throughout the game.
Well, that's what you need. It takes intensity to win, and it's a choice to win ultimately in the NFL, especially when you get to the playoffs. Are you going to focus on the details? Are you going to give yourself the opportunity to win the game? And I can tell you from playing with the great ones, they don't think about losing. And that may sound like, oh, yeah, I don't think about losing either. Yes, you do. But the great ones, it's always, hey, we're going to win this game. This is what we're going to do. So they move, they talk in a different way constantly. But Brandon, this is also about the hope that Tom Brady gave thousands of NFL players throughout the year. He was number 199. Don't go in there and complain about your draft position. Do the work. He wasn't brought back to the Patriots, an organization literally he built with a coach's resume he built. We can get into that if you want to later, but don't worry about it. It's true, right? And he still was winning. I mean, he gave everyone hope. Ryan Jensen's just one of the thousands of players that are better because of Tom Brady. That's how good he was. Not only did he give hope, but he made thousands of other players in the NFL better. Name me somebody else who's done that.
That is true. Our Brady Quinn talked about that as well. But let's get into it. You just mentioned it. You might as well share it a little bit with the class here.
Hey, I'll tell you what. There's no question that Bill Belichick's a fantastic coach. It was an honor to play against him in my 10 years. I had multiple chances to do that. And Tom Brady's the reason why Bill Belichick's the coach of the New England Patriots. I mean, Bill Belichick without Tom Brady, that's who got fired from the Browns. It's okay, Bill. It really is. But Tom Brady was the difference maker. You can ask any coach who ever called him. He did things that no one else could do, saw things. He was the football AI before AI. I mean, he saw things that other people didn't see. Even this year, number one in getting the football off at just under 2.5 seconds. So Tom Brady's excellence is what created tremendous opportunities, the Tyree throw, all of these things. How about the comeback? You know, down 28-3. Nobody else is doing that. Bill, come on, Bill. How's it been since he left, Bill? Tremendous respect for Bill Belichick. Absolutely Hall of Fame coach. And he will be one because of Tom Brady.
That is history that a lot of youngsters would not be able to see. I'm curious, Ryan, you have little ones at home. I'm curious, what would you tell your grandkids who Tom Brady was and what he meant to the NFL over those 23 seasons?
Tom Brady was the greatest player in NFL history with the most championships, and he raised the level of competition for even the Hall of Famers around him. Guys I played with Peyton Manning as well as Ben Roethlisberger, they were very aware of what Tom Brady was doing. In the AFC, every quarterback believed that they had to beat Tom Brady, and they probably did if they wanted to go to the Super Bowl. So I'll tell my kids he was the greatest football player to ever make it, and he won the most. And pay attention to his golf swing. Don't be a quarterback, be a golfer. That's what I'll tell my grandkids.
I don't know, that match chip-in shot, you know, a couple years ago, that's something that's legendary because I can't do it. I don't know if you got it in your bag. I don't know if you got that, but, you know, that's something legendary.
I'll find the club. I'll find the club this year.
All right, Ryan Harris, as always, breaking it down. Appreciate you joining us on that breaking news. TB12, calling it a career, my friend. Appreciate it.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.